Bracha for
bracha on
chocolate.
chocolate. That's a good question. The common custom is to say shahakol, but there is a big debate that maybe we do the wrong thing. I actually just had on Tu B'Shvat, we had a cocoa fruit from a cocoa tree, and you actually, the seed is the main purpose of the fruit, and that is the cocoa. And no one eats cocoa beans plain, even though I did on Tu B'Shvat. But the only way to eat it is really in chocolate. So there's room to say that they're planted for the eating of it, the purpose of the way it's, it's grown in order to be made into chocolate. I've never seen anyone else eat it except on Tu B'Shvat as eating that seed that it's like a large pit that's somewhat soft and chewable. It's chewable. I shouldn't say soft, but it's not too hard.
So you say pri ha'etz?
So logic would say maybe the bracha should be ha'etz, but everyone says shahakol, and we don't. I'm not. There have been rabbis that wanted to question it, because that's the main fruit of that tree is the chocolate. It's made into chocolate. That's really what it's made into. So there's definitely room to say ha'etz, but the common bracha is shahakol, and it's not a problem. You definitely fulfill the obligation of brachas by saying shahakol. Until the rabbis make a consensus and agree to change it, I still say shahakol on it. But there have been individual rabbis that have created a little question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the Gemara. So we want to continue. Maybe let's go a little further in the Gemara. We have Amar Reb Zera, which is. It is a dot in the middle of it's right in the middle of the page, 39a. Amar Reb Zera. Reb Zera says, so we are, let's see, about 25 lines down from the top of the page. Amar Reb Zera said, Ki avinan bei Rav Huna. When we were in the Beis Medrash by Rav Huna, Amar Lon, he told us. Rav Huna told us, Hani gargalidai delifta, those heads of the turnip. And Rashi learns that we're talking about a raw turnip. And he says, Parminhu prima rabba, they were cut into thick pieces. Beire priyadam, you recite a hadam. Prima zuta, they're cut into small pieces. Shakal niabidvara, you would recite a shahakal. And somehow by changing the way their appearance is, the bracha changes. So you're eating this raw. I don't know what turnips taste like. I don't know. I would assume most people probably eat them cooked. But in any event, there is a big discussion, I must say, in the commentaries in law of what the bracha is. If they're normally eaten, I guess it depends if they're normally, depends on where the person eats them. But there is a question as to the bracha. I believe as the Torah brings down different opinions about lifta, about this food called lifta. But in any event, Rashi is learning that they're raw here, and if they were large pieces, it's hadama. If it's small pieces, it is shahako. And when we came to the a base medrash of Rav Yehuda, Amar Lan, he told us, Idi bar Adama. Whether it's large pieces or small pieces, bar Adama. V'hai defar minu tfei, and this that we cut them up into very small pieces, kihechi denamtik taime, in order to make the taste better. So, yeah, they do bring down about the Torah brings down that there's an argument between Rav Hai Goin and the Goinim as to Rav Hai Goin says when it's raw you say shahaka, when it's cooked it's hadama, and the Goinim say the opposite. So you have opposing views as to what the bracha is on turnip. In any event, here Rashi is learning that the case is talking about that it's raw, and we have Rav Huna telling us that it depends if it's cut up into large pieces or small pieces, and Rav Yehuda says doesn't matter; they're always going to be ha'adama. In this, that it's the fact that you cut it up small is because it causes its taste to be sweeter, to sweeten its the taste of the turnip. Now, what it comes out is that Rav Huna says the appearance is more important, and you're changing the appearance from the way it's normally eaten. Rav Yehuda says, since it tastes sweeter this way, this is the way it's normally eaten. So they seem to be arguing about what is the norm, or which is surprising. Normally, we don't like to say that there's an argument in facts. In other words, in logic, you could argue. In something that's a fact, is this the normal way it's eaten or not? So we normally don't like to explain it that way. That one says this is the normal way of eating it, and or this is a different way of eating it. It seems like then the understanding would be that probably a lot of people don't do this, but there is a significant amount of people that do cut it up into small pieces, and logically this would be this is much better. So Rav Yehuda says that's good enough to make it that is considered norm. Something along those lines. Again, because we don't like to say that they're arguing in facts. Do people do it or don't people do it? So, but the idea of Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda here actually there is an interesting discussion about the maror that we have on Pesach, because the maror that we have on Pesach, we grind it up into very small pieces. Now, according to this Gemara, what would happen if you grind up the maror into small pieces? So, according to Rav Huna, maybe it would not be hadam anymore. This could be problematic. And according to Rav Yehuda, it's not a problem. But maybe it is. Because Rav Yehuda says the reason why it's not a problem, you could say hadama, even on if it's cut up a lot, is because it makes it taste better, sweeter. And for the turnip, it actually tastes better. By the maror, it actually makes it lose its flavor. So here it's making its flavor better by cutting it up. Maror, you're actually making it lose its flavor. So even Rav Yehuda might argue and say that our maror maybe should be shahakal. Maybe both opinions would say shahakal. You get it? The first opinion, you're cutting up to anything small, it's shahakal. The second opinion, the reason cutting up small would be the bracha is because you're doing it in order to sweeten the taste and to make it taste better. And with maror, you're actually ruining it. You're ruining the strength of the maror. But obviously, the common custom is to eat maror. But what I'm sharing with you is discussed in the commentaries. The Chavis Das brings this in his Haggadah. He brings this this issue of cutting up the maror too small. Maybe you shouldn't. It seems like he didn't cut up the maror too small. He would have it into pieces that you would chew, chips. He would have maror chips maybe, but obviously the custom is to chop up them, is to grind up the maror, and it's for sure not a problem. That's what the entire world does. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, does it matter whether you cut it before the cooking or after?
Well, there's two ways of learning this Gemara. Some say that we're talking about raw all along.
Okay. But I'm just asking in general, because,
and some say that
this particular thing, it's too large to eat it as one. You have to cut it up, whether it's before the cooking or after. I'm talking about the
turnip.
The turnip.
No, they come small.
I don't know. The turnips that we get were big ones.
Small ones.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know if it makes a difference
in the chicken soup, but then I cut it up. I can't eat it as one piece, But
they come all.
I don't know if it makes a difference if you cook it before you cut it or you cook it after. I don't know. I'm not. I guess you got to taste it.
I just wonder.
You'll tell me if it tastes better. Which one tastes better? If you cook it before, you cook it after. I would guess it tastes
the same cut up or not.
I would think.
Yeah.
Yes, Avram.
Rabbi, talking about something changing its identity, what about grape jelly? Grape jelly doesn't look like grapes, and also I believe they add sugar, so it must be cooked, or it's now becomes sweeter than a grape. What happens? Is it shechal?
That is a good question. Number one, what we have to do is really go back to some of the Gemaras we learned earlier, because we did discuss a little about fruits losing their identity and how ground up are we talking about? A lot of the jellies, I think, are made from concentrated grape juice, if I'm not mistaken, grape jellies, but I'm not, I don't know if there are pieces in it, so if there, but the question would also be, right, on a grape jelly. Let's see what the article book, the question is who eats plain jelly, but if you do, I guess that's the question, right? If you were to, most people smear it on their bread, but let's just see what they say about jelly, jam. Here, they don't have grape jelly. Let's see if they have something under jelly. Jelly, they just say shahako. Jam without fruit pieces is shahako, which makes sense. There is a concept of, is that what the majority of that fruit is made into? And I would think not. I would think most fruits are made, especially grapes are made into wine, or they're eaten. So, but that would be something that would be a factor if something was only, we discussed a little about this when we spoke about peanut butter and cashew butter and almond butter. We did talk a little about this, if what is the majority, use it for. And we mentioned an interesting thing, that peanut butter, the majority is made into peanut butter. Majority of peanuts are actually made into peanut butter. So we did discuss a little about that. But
there's a difference between jam and jelly. One has pieces of fruit, the other one does not.
Preserves have pieces of fruit.
Is that the difference of the meaning of the word? Yeah. Interesting. Because they say here that both are jam without fruit pieces and jelly, they both say shahako. But you're saying jam normally has fruit pieces, or jelly has fruit pieces?
I don't know. I don't eat that much of it, but I know that there's a difference.
Jam has the pieces, but there's also a third, which is called preserve.
Uh-huh.
right, which has pieces of the fruit in it to smear on your bread or cracker. So jelly is pretty much a gel, and then a preserve are pieces, and a spread maybe another iteration of a jam.
Well, Robert, you're a lifesaver, because now we looked up preserves, and now we find what we're looking for. Preserves strawberry with solids, hadama. Preserves fruit with fruit solids, ha'etz. So looks like you're right. When it has the actual pieces, then the bracha will retain. In other words, it hasn't been changed its form fully. It still has the pieces. So I guess you got to check out the fruit, the grape jelly, Avraham. Depends on what's in it. If it actually has pieces, or if it's made from if it's more of a just a liquid jam that hardens. Yes, someone has a question.
Thank you.
Susan.
On the moro, I thought moro had to be bitter herbs.
Yes, it does.
So
There's two things people use for it.
that's
People
what
use
my question was.
either horseradish or romaine lettuce. Those are the two things. The two customary things to have is romaine
But not
lettuce or
turnips.
horseradish.
Not
What?
turnips.
No. We're just comparing the
I
two.
was confused.
We're comparing the law of turnips, the fact about it being ground up, to the law of maror being ground up, which is a little surprising that we compare it, but that's
Okay.
but anyway, they mention this Gemara here as to can you grind it up or not. I encourage people to grind it up, because it could be dangerous if you eat, if it's too thick and hard. But even though according to this Gemara, you could question something, but the commentaries discuss it. It's not like it's not discussed. And what we do is okay. Yes, Ruvain.
Yeah, I've got a question about the kashivus. Is it if a specific individual prefers it in a particular food, or is it society in general?
No, it's you, specifically you. But it is interesting, because every case here we have to see what the law is. Do we follow you, or do we follow? You're right. There is such a concept here in the laws of Brochos where you find this fluctuating. Sometimes we look at the majority. Do people use this for such a thing? And sometimes we look at what in your scenario, and you have to know when to call when to call what. Which law, which policy. Here regarding the bracha of priorities, you go by what you cherish more. Okay, so this is the Gemara here where we talk about this lifta, the head of the turnip, and it's cut up into pieces. And then the Gemara continues, and it says, Amar ravashi. So we're now, Amar ravashi, maybe about 20 lines from the bottom of the page. Ravashi says, Ki avina be Rav Kahana, when we were in the Beis Medrash of Rav Kahana, Ravashi says, Amar Lon, he told us, Tavshila de Silka, a tavshil, a cooked food that had tavshila. Tavshila de silka, a tavshil of beets, the loy mafshu be kimcha, which doesn't have a lot of flour. Bari priyadama, you recite a bari priyadama because the beets are the main food, and the lifta, but a cooked dish of lifta of turnip. So the mafshu bakimcha that they normally put a lot of flour in. The mafshu bakimcha tvei, they put a lot of flour in. So bari mina mezainas, the bracha would be mezainas. And that was his initial statement. Hadar Amar, and then afterwards Rav Kahana changed his mind, and he said, Edi v'edi, whether you have a dish of beets or a dish of turnip, with one which has a smaller amount of flour, the other one which has a larger amount of flour. Either one, you recite the bracha on the dish. In this, that they put more flour in, they only put more flour in it, only because they need it more to bind the dish together. So it's not there for sustaining purposes. It's there simply to bind it together, and therefore the bracha on it would be ho'adama, the bracha on the turnip or on the beets. And this is the source of that kashivus that we learned way back, that even though we normally look at flour as in any of the 5 grains as main sources of being that they're the main sources of sustenance, we always look at them as the ikar, as the primary food. And when they're mixed with other foods, even if they're the minority, they always are given a certain importance, and we recite the bracha on them. However, there are exceptions, and one of the exceptions is this Gemara, and that is l'debuke bi'alma. If something is used as a binder, that would be an exception to the rule, and that is the accepted halacha, and it creates problems because a lot of times we don't know if it's really the binder. And I mentioned to you a case a while back when we learned that kashivus. One of the big debates among the rabbis is licorice. Is the flour in it just to bind the licorice together, or is it really there as part of the texture? Now, I would say that it's there as part of the texture. People, you like it as a thick, hard type of thing. So my thought is that it's mezainis, but there are rabbis that argue, and they claim it's shahakol, and it's the purpose is the flour is there just as a binder. And they actually have done research and found that they did research. They once tried to make a gluten-free one. It didn't work. So I believe I'm right. But anyway, people have their tastes. Yes, Ezra.
Yeah, but Rabbi, if you remember, you said that if they did not put in the flour, then it becomes a mess as far
Right.
as okay. And so, in fact, the flour is needed in order to bind it. So therefore, and you also said, as long as it's not more than 40%, then it would be considered a shehakol.
Now, I remember we did mention something about the percentage, but I don't remember exactly the details. What were we talking about when we spoke about the 40%?
Well, you said if it becomes rove, then it would have to be according to the flour. And if it's not rove, in this particular case, it's just a binder, then it goes according to what we normally would say for licorice, which is shehakol.
No, now I remember what we said. What we said is that, now I remember. Okay, thanks. What we said was that they did research in the licorice company, and they found out that this is not a small amount of flour. It's actually 40% flour. That's what we said. And when they went, that itself was like like they dropped a bomb. People's, the realization that it's that to that extent that this 40% flour was sort of like a wake up call and saying that this definitely should be mezainis, because it's not just a binder. It's a nice amount of flour. It's 40%. That's
It's up to 40%. It doesn't have
whatever
to be
the term was, but it made a surprising revelation that this is not a small amount of flour in the licorice. Again, I'm not arguing if someone wants to say a shehakol and believes that it's there as a binder. They could. One of the things that the rabbis do say is, because it's so hard to figure out if it's a binder or not, therefore you try to eat these type of food items only in a meal. But so it's not simple, and so it's not simple to say. But the point is, what happens if it's both a binder and it's giving it some texture and taste? So obviously, in such a scenario, the bracha is mezainis. It's allowed to be a binder. Doesn't override the fact that it's also there as a binder. Doesn't override the fact that there might be other reasons it's there. So if there's any other reason that it's there as well, that is the overriding factor. If it's there for texture and for flavor, then and for sustenance, that it definitely takes on the bracha of mezainis, even though it's also used as a binder. So in the case of, again, I guess it depends on